Okie dokie. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's live stream. I have the hiccups that will last for the next 3 minutes. Um, I've been busy. Been very busy. I recently launched a Kickstarter for my dice, and we should be hitting $200,000 funded by Monday, which is a little ridiculous, to be honest. That is a lot of money. Um, Somebody actually went ahead and purchased a set of my dice out of pure 14 karat gold. Yeah. So I got a lot of work to do. I've been busy. Yeah, it's a $6,000 set of dice. What a treat. But you got questions about Bitcoin down here. What is going on here? As Kat has previously said in our trading channel, our Discord, which you can join in the link down below, there are known macro level players who have positions where they have to sell, or rather, where they're contractually obliged to sell, at around 17,000, and it is a very large position. And the thing is, the question is, if there is this money on the table, it wouldn't take much for an institution to get a loan and push price down that low for a rather reliable short. All right, I'm going to take 15 seconds because I can typically willpower myself into stopping my hiccups. So just give me a second. All right, deep breaths. We'll see if that works. So the question is, this here is a very long and extended period of expansion. And the way expansions typically work is on the macro level, you have one single long connected expansion. Okay, never mind. My hiccups are still here. You have one continuous long expansion. On the lower time frames, this manifests in a cycle of repeated bouts of expansion and short-term compression. Right? Imagine you have a slingshot and you ask, well, how many shots did you fire in an hour? You're going to say, I don't know, 1,000, right? So does that mean he's pulling back the slingshot the entire time? No. On the lower time frames, he's firing the slingshot and then he has to pull it back to restore the potential energy before the rocket can be fired again. And we can actually use that as our metric to define when trends should be starting and stopping, right? Because you can look and say, hey, the slingshot's pulled all the way back, which is what happened here. And lo and behold, the shot fires. Whereas, on the higher time frame, you could say, yeah, we're firing a bunch of rounds per minute. But what that looks like on the lower time frame is actually much more discernible. So we can actually define that pivot. Previously here, it was the 200 period, which I will define manually. I'm going to click this 20 times because I'm tired. All right. Beautiful. And what you will notice here, very cleanly, is... Wow, I have to click remove drawings. That's super annoying. All right. That is a new feature. As the expansion happens, we enter the mean reversion condition here. And I'm defining this based on bottom of the expansion of the plume. That's basing it off the volatility overhead. Because if we go in a lower time frame, like the 1 hour, let's do 2 hour because that might max out. Right, we should essentially just get double that value, so 400 as shown here on the wave PM. Yep, look at that. The value is exactly 400, right? Why? Because these are intra-time frame indicators. On the 4 hour, you get a reading of 200. So if you double the period, you get a reading of 400, right? Intra-time frame indicators are extremely rare and extremely powerful because the perspective provided is going to be much more universal. So if we define this band down here as 400, we would get the exact same band as we defined here on the 4 hour as 200. So for the sake of simplicity, we'll just go back to the 4 hour. What do we see? We see the entry of a 1.25 standard deviation, and our target is the middle. What happens? We tag the middle to the dollar and then immediately reject and finish compression. So what happens then? The way we define when this is finished is when that the 200 period turns blue, which happens on this candle. I'll do Alt V to define that. At this candle, we say price, the slingshot is fully pulled back, and price can once again fire. And within the day of that signal triggering, we see significant trend continuation. Right? This is ridiculously, stupidly accurate, and something that I would be trading 10 hours a day if I wasn't swamped with making dice and advertising. Apparently, I have a current cost per click of 15 cents on my ad, and that's essentially like a sixth of what you're expected to pay on Instagram. It's ridiculous. And 20 to 1 on a return on ad spent. I spent $42 on an ad, and it returned 900. So I got something here. And I also have something on this chart. Just, I don't have the bandwidth to do both at the same time right now. But I do have the bandwidth to stream for you. I'm going to take a nice half hour tonight, and we'll define all those burning questions you might have for me. Of course, if you actually do have any questions, I encourage you to drop them here in the TradingView chat. I'll be happy to answer them. Now, what we are currently looking at is this pivot right here, the 220 value for our current expansion. We can actually define this, right? Okay, I'm actually going to type it this time. 220. Okay. So, we are directly on the pivot. It looks like we're actually entering the pivot. This is very promising. Essentially, what's going to happen here is it's looking like we're actually breaking inside. So if I wake up tomorrow morning and price has done nothing but go sideways, I'm going to buy. I'm going to take a long, and I'm going to go up to that 220 moving average, which is going to be a rebound to around, at current price, 26,000, which is huge. That's a big move. It's a 23% turn. Of course, what's more likely going to happen is the mean is simply going to travel down to meet price, and price is just going to do this. Whee! I would like a little bit more definition on this current chart. I would like to see this progress slightly further inside the band to get confirmation. Because, of course, we could immediately drop right now, and this could just be a tiny little blip inside before trend continuation. So I actually want some confirmation inside the band before I take this position. And what we could do is we could define our CLCP using the ACAT indicator to actually define that swing low for us. I'm going to have both bands on at the same time. Yeah. So current CLCP is defining itself down here at 19,000. So if we actually did progress inside this, say we tacked up to 2230, the safest long you could possibly put is here at 1940. Okay, that would be a very safe long. If we came down, we bounced off that value, and you could probably either try to resell at the local high or hold until mean reversion completes. Ah, that was super annoying. I deleted everything on the chart because that is an option in the new trash bin. That's so stupid. Control Z. All right, thank you. All right. Let us take a look at the questions for tonight. Ocean BTC. Typically, Zealot has a tremendous eye for good charts. He recommended this on the 20th. We will start on the daily. Okay, my immediate guess is you're looking at this mean reversion condition here, the 90 period. We will manually define that. No, usually that's the 20th. So this is technically mean reverting. What you'll notice here, as we saw the immediate jump up, we tagged, we bounced down to the local low, and we're back up here to the mean. 4-hour chart. I think you might, yeah, okay. So you are looking at the Wave PM cross. This looked good. I see what you're going for here. You have the slope, you have the cross, and what we do not have is the confirmation of the 14 period above the 0.7 value. That would have been the kicker for entry into the position. Next up is here, if we go down to the 2-hour chart, we can actually see if this generated a period of mass. Looks like we'll have to do the 1 hour because it's not defining. Yeah, so 1 hour did have that nice expansion, very clean. Put up ACAT because that will define itself nicely for us. Your entries would have been here, here, and here. And you would have stopped out once we actually broke into that longest over expanded period. Yeah, so good opportunity. It just didn't actually manage to get that cross on the 4-hour chart, but good opportunity. Okay, next up, let's take a look at sushi. Also on the 20th, yeah, dude, this one played out. This is gorgeous. You have your nice CLCP, you have your tag, and you have your tag, which broke, which ended up in full mean reversion. So your take profit points on this chart likely would have been tag of the 3.2 standard deviation, and you likely would not have gotten this exit here because it didn't tag, which means you likely would have stopped out at, once again, the break, which ultimately would have led to a return of 6%. That's pretty good. Or since you were doing this on the 20th, we could assume just from here to mean reversion, 12%. Again, very nice chart. Next up, let's take a look at Seoul. So I used to work for, I did some art for some people making some NFTs. And I'm be with you, pretty mismanaged. It was pretty ugly. Paid me well, and I got to keep my money, and I never bought their NFTs, so I'd say it's a win-win for me. This is quite the kickback. Essentially, what we're going to do here is we can define this mean reversion. This is very sloping, and we aren't actually getting definition. Yeah. Okay, so the issue I'm seeing here is this is a bit too tapered to actually define trend off of, which means I don't particularly like the opportunity. I will manually define off the 90 period. It's already defined as 90. Cool. Looks like if you're already in this, you can hold so long as you're above the 1.25 standard deviation of the 90 period. But I would not recommend an entry at the current time. If you can short this, do go ahead and short once this period breaks. Once again, 90 period, 1.25 standard deviation. Could you touch on Bitcoin pairs with correlation coefficient? Yeah, essentially, when you're trading, if you're seeing heavy correlation coefficient with Bitcoin, like this, all this section here, right? This all means you're trading Bitcoin, but with leverage, all right? And that's not what you want to do. You just want to trade Bitcoin. However, if you see well-defined and independent movement, that means it's trading freely from Bitcoin, and it is safe to take plays on it. So first, you want to make sure Bitcoin is going to do well, and then you want to make sure your altcoin is doing well. If you just take a look at the altcoin USD pairing, you're assuming it's a single pendulum when in actuality it's a double pendulum, right? If you ignore the middle joint, it's going to end up being much more random than you could have anticipated. Next up, we're going to look at GMT. Ooh, where did you call this one out? 7 a.m. 12 hours ago? Wow, dude. What a catch. 17%, eh? Very interesting. I'm assuming. Zilla, I'm sure you're killing it. You keep on picking really good charts. All right, so 1 hour chart. I wouldn't consider this a very clean wave PM cross. I would have taken it. This one here, yeah, that's what I want to see. Yeah, this one back here was absolutely beautiful. You got your trend defining pivot. ACAT will handle this very nicely. Next up, what we see, full mean reversion. As we just discussed, we want to wait for this period to turn blue, which happened this candle. On that candle, we said we could once again re-enable trend. What you'll notice is we had a very nice start, upward sloping trend, had high volatility on that 3.2 standard deviation of the CLCP. Let's take a look at this on the 30-minute. Actually, you should probably use the 27-minute. It's a very, very arbitrary institutional benchmark, but I'm not getting into that tonight. Or honestly, I don't think I ever will, because it was kind of just a passing comment from Mark Whistler. Where we were having a meeting, and he like, hey, but do you know why the 27-minute works so well? And then he just kind of like smirked to himself. It's like the big boys use it. Didn't say that, but it was contextual. Yeah, so down here, just define your CLCP, or your locks, excuse me. Hexus. All right. Hex BTC. I'm pretty sure that's what you asked for. Sorry, kidding. Hex USDC. All right, it's going to be a low volume pair, which is disgusting. David chart. Yeah, I can't define this. So the problem is this is completely maxed out on the daily, and we don't have any history before that period. Four-hour chart. You do have, this is interesting. This is a really clean break, actually. Question is, can we define the pivot? And I don't know I can with my metrics. Chart. So the main issue here is we didn't see a long enough compressionary period to enable a clean reading on this gentle upward slope. Right? It would have either needed to be a much sharper move, or it would have needed to happen just a bit later. Either of those situations would have allowed us to actually get a better read on it. All right, folks, get your final questions in. I'm going to give you a good 30 seconds. With the success of my Kickstarter, I'm actually thinking about finally getting some Sennheiser HD800 headphones. I've been dreaming about doing so since I was probably like sophomore year of high school. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I got the HC299s a while back, and they're wonderful. I love open back headphones. But I think I finally have a reasonable reason to actually get them. And the fact that they essentially just hold their value indefinitely means you can resell them for the exact price you bought them. So it's a really good deal getting the headphones. Yeah, sure, they're $1,300, but the resale value doesn't decrease. So it's not like you're getting a fancy car. Of course, I'll actually need to get an amp to match it. I do have a nice audio interface, but they're very amp specific headphones, and I'll need to go to like local audiophile stores to actually test them. It'll be a lot of work, but it's worth it. All right, been a pleasure. Talk to you all later. Hopefully see you next time this week.